You're Andrew Friedman, general manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers, a team that just won 100 games during the regular season, a record 111 wins the season before that, 5 of the last 6 full seasons with at least 100 wins, and in the shortened 2020 season, a championship was won. The Dodgers have now made it to the postseason for 10 consecutive years, 9 of those years featuring division titles, with the one non-division title being a year where they lost it by a single game, only to then beat the team that won the division, the Giants, in the postseason, so they may as well have been crowned the division anyway. Yet, despite the Dodgers having as much success as the Marvel Cinematic Universe did in the same stomping grounds of Hollywood, with their decade-long dominance at the box office, they just went one and done in the postseason for the second straight year against a division rival that was at least 16 games behind them in the standings. The 89-win Padres in 2022 taking down the 111-win Dodgers in 4 games, with the 84-win Diamondbacks taking down the 100-win Dodgers in even quicker fashion, clean sweeping them in 3 games. I mean, speaking of Marvel, the Avengers going up against Thanos originally is a pretty good summary of how the Dodgers have been over the last decade. The regular season success is fun. It always is for any team. And the Dodgers have been objectively the best team in baseball for a decade now. The only issue is the fact that that statement ends right there, that there's really no postseason success to show for it. I mean, the Dodgers are literally the Avengers from April through September. They're loaded with talent and superpower, only to get dusted in October. I can talk all day about how fake 2020 feels, how it was a shortened year. It was a championship won in Texas between 2 teams that weren't based in Texas. I mean, the whole thing just wasn't that real. I've said it before and I'll say it again, it's not a Dodger thing. It's a 2020 thing. Anybody who would have won the World Series in 2020 would get the same treatment of having a Mickey Mouse ring. The Dodgers were the best team that year, there's no denying that, but every single team was put in an unfortunate circumstance that whoever won wouldn't be as legitimate of a champion as any other champion that won in a full year. So as a result, even with a ring in 2020, over this insanely dominant stretch the Dodgers have been on, there's really not too much to be proud of. No championships in years where it really seemed like it could have been the year, no parades, no packed houses to see the Dodgers win it all, and with the Diamondbacks doing what they did, making quick work of the Dodgers and making it look easy, Andrew Friedman, the rest of the Dodgers front office, and the ownership decided to take things a step even further than they ever have with this juggernaut team and franchise. They decided to spend more money than anybody in history to set themselves up to be potentially the best team in history, only to get arguably worse. So welcome, and if you're part of the 70% of viewers not subscribed yet, come aboard and join the wonderful people who are subscribed to the channel, as the Dodgers are no strangers to spending money and getting some of the best players in baseball. A lot of their talent is homegrown or overlooked players from other organizations who the Dodgers saw potential and when nobody else did, something Andrew Friedman and the Dodger front office has done a good job with over the years, which will become more important later on in this video. But for now, let's just say the Dodgers aren't fully a bought team, and it's been this way for a long time. With that said, they do supplement their homegrown and cheaper talent with superstars from other organizations. Mookie Betts was the biggest in franchise history before the actual biggest one, when the Dodgers extended him to a 12-year, $365 million contract months after trading for him. Trevor Bauer was the next one, not for as many years, but still for a ridiculous amount of money. That didn't end up working out so well, but the Freddie Freeman contract that came before 2022 has worked just as well as the Mookie Betts deal. Freeman was signed for 6 years and $162 million. So Mookie and Freeman showed that the Dodgers, of course, were not afraid to splurge on outside stardom. So it was never a surprise that the Dodgers were a serious contender for Shohei Ohtani. But did the Dodgers necessarily need Shohei Ohtani? No, they didn't. They were still an incredibly talented organization without him, and even if the Dodgers did find some more success in the postseason over the last few years, I'd still think that they would have a good chance of getting Shohei. It's not just because they lost, but of course, continuing to choke in October helps with wanting to go overboard to achieve your goal, and so that's exactly what the Dodgers did, signing Shohei Ohtani to the largest contract in sports history, $700 million for 10 years, deferring the vast majority of the contract to free up money on the payroll before trading for Tyler Glasnow and immediately extending him to a 5-year deal worth $136 million. And for the ultimate cherry on top, or more like a bomb on top, add Yoshinobu Yamamoto and his $325 million contract to the Dodgers. So not only are you adding the most talented baseball player of all time, but 2 of the most talented pitchers in the world, again, to add to a team that was already loaded with talent. So it was pretty safe to deem the Dodgers as the favorites moving forward. Not that they wouldn't have been the favorites without any of these moves. They were like upgraded favorites now, if that makes any sense. And the Dodgers are a very good team as we currently stand here in 2024. There's no denying that at all. But there is an argument in case that should be made, because it's pretty true, that the Dodgers are in a worse spot right now with the way things have gone. They say money can't buy happiness, and that really is true. Sure, money can bring you temporary happiness, or happiness for some sort of period of time, but in that case, it would just be pleasure, not true happiness. This has always been the case in life and with baseball teams. You can't just buy what you want. I mean, sure, you can buy certain players and sign certain talent that you want, but that doesn't directly translate to the ultimate goal of winning a championship, which is essentially what you're trying to sign at the end of the day. The Dodgers didn't sign Shohei Ohtani to look at him. They didn't sign Yoshinobu Yamamoto just because they felt nice and wanted to make him rich. No, they of course signed those players among others with the goal of a championship being the reward on the other end. You don't win a championship by giving someone money. And no, I'm not calling the Dodgers a failure right now. That's not what the point of this is at all. Not only do they still have a great chance of winning it all this year, but for many years to come. But the same exact thing can be said for previous years when they didn't have Ohtani or Yamamoto, which brings me to the main point, which is where we get into why the Dodgers are actually in a worse spot right now, despite spending so much money and getting talent. No matter how rich you are as a team, no matter how much money you have to spend on great players, and no matter how many great players you get, that does not guarantee anything on the field. It certainly guarantees many things off of the field, like hype, excitement, ticket sales, jersey sales, merchandise sales, all of that, which is great, but it doesn't translate to simply being the best baseball team. Why? Well, no money or talent can prevent injuries. The injury bug is like the damn boogeyman. He haunts everybody in the entire world, no matter who you are, where you are, what the case is. You're not immune to getting hurt in some sort of way. And unfortunately for the Dodgers, despite spending upwards of $1 billion over the offseason, the injury bug has been pretty cruel to this team, most notably the pitchers. Before the year even started, the Dodgers had pitchers on the shelf. Dustin May, someone who already got Tommy John surgery in 2021, had to get another elbow surgery a couple years later. Not too long after that, Tony Gonsolin would get Tommy John surgery, and after the 2023 season ended, Clayton Kershaw would get shoulder surgery. So that's 3 starting pitchers right there off rip who would not be contributing to the Dodgers for at least the first half of the season. And the state of the Dodger pitching staff has only gotten worse in an injury sense, which we'll get to soon. But then you have some of the hitters who have also gotten hit with some injury situations. The toughest one, of course, being when Mookie Betts got hit in the hand with a 98-mile-an-hour fastball, fracturing it and having to be out for weeks as a result to rest and wait for it to heal. I mean, that's your top guy going down. But then you also have Max Muncy with a messed up oblique that will apparently be keeping him out longer than originally even expected. Jason Hayward recently suffered a knee injury, one that isn't as bad as Mookie and Muncy's situation, so that's good. But not only have the Dodgers had some hitting injuries, they've also had some unexpected steep declines from what was expected to be some of their best hitters. I mean, from what we've seen so far this year, James Outman is looking like as much of a one-hit wonder than that song Somebody That I Used to Know. After having such an impressive year last year in his rookie year, finishing 3rd in the Rookie of the Year voting, Outman was so bad at the plate that the Dodgers sent him back down in the minor leagues. Chris Taylor has been just as bad, pretty much unplayable, same with Gavin Lux in his first year after missing all of 2023 because of a nasty injury. And in the case of Lux, patience seems to be running thin. At least with Chris Taylor, he was never expected to be great at any point in his career. He's always been an above-average utility guy for the Dodgers, and he's at least in the past been very productive. But Lux, on the other hand, was the team's top prospect at one point, and has showed nothing to prove that he deserved to be deemed that kind of a player so far in the big leagues, which is where we get into the lack of any Andrew Friedman magic as of late. What Friedman and the Dodger front office has done very well over the years, like I talked about earlier, is pluck guys from other organizations who were given up on, who nobody else sees potential in, and have them become very valuable players for the Dodgers, like Chris Taylor, Max Muncy, guys like that. Obviously, a move like Shohei Ohtani is obvious, and him being great shouldn't necessarily give Friedman much praise. It's the smaller moves where a general manager really shows how good he is at building a roster The draft picks, the players that you picked off of waivers, and the subtle trades, the ones that people don't really talk about but they end up becoming big. Gavin Lux was drafted by Andrew Friedman, and that hasn't worked out. He brought back Kike Hernandez, and that hasn't worked out at all either. In a very classic Dodger move, the team picked up Kevin Biggio after he was designated for assignment by the Blue Jays because he was doing so poorly, and he's only continued to do just as poorly in LA. Now, does all of this blame deserve to be put on the shoulders of Friedman? No. Like, for example, Teoscar Hernandez was a great signing, more on the underrated side of things, but there is something to some of that magic not happening right now. The Dodgers may have arguably the 3 top hitters in the game at the top of their lineup, and one of, if not the best top halves of a lineup in all of baseball. But they also simultaneously have one of the weaker bottom halves of a lineup in all of baseball despite the insane payroll. It's not very balanced from top to bottom, even with everyone healthy, but then you factor in the injury bug situation and it gets even worse. Which brings us back to the pitching staff, the part of the team that's been hit by far the most. Walker Buehler made his return to the mound for the first time in 2 years this year. He's been awful, had to be put on the injured list because of right hip inflammation, and there's not really a clear sight of when he'll be back. And even when he is back, will he be good? Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the $325 million ace, has been dealing with right triceps tightness while also being put on the injured list because of a right rotator cuff strain. And when I look into each Dodger pitcher who's hurt, it's almost like I'm reading about the same guy every time. They're hurt, they're expected to be back this season, but there's no clear path to when that will happen, and a lot of things just seem up in the air. I mean, it's literally for every single person. And after just being named an all-star for how good he's been in the first half of the season, Tyler Glasnow has now been shot with the injury bug with lower back tightness. I mean, we're starting to get to the point where you look at some of the names of the Dodgers and go, who? Justin Robelski. Ever heard of him? I'm sure he's a great guy. It's of course nothing personal, but I'm willing to bet the Dodgers didn't have him on their mind when spending north of $1 billion over the winter. I don't think they thought or hoped he would be someone brought up this season, mostly because of this very reason. I mean, so many guys are dropping like flies that unexpected names have to be filling those spots. And it's not just happening to the rotation guys, the guys who throw more innings. Ryan Brazier has been out since late April because of a calf injury, and Joe Kelly has been out since early May because of a shoulder injury. It's been pretty dreadful as far as all this injury stuff goes. As for the Dodgers as a team on the field and the guys healthy enough to play and how they're playing, they're a good team, a very good team that will still more than likely win the division pretty soundly. But I still don't see enough from them to fully believe that things will be any different this October. You of course never know what can happen. A lot of these guys may come back soon enough and be great, but for a team to spend as much money as they did this offseason, I will say it's pretty overall disappointing to see what it's translated to. This team is arguably in a worse spot than they were a year ago. It may just be a momentary thing, but spending money on good players doesn't prevent those good players from getting hurt. It doesn't prevent pitchers from having arm issues. And despite the richest team in baseball spending the most money in history to better their team, what they currently have as a result is an incredibly unbalanced lineup, a relatively unreliable pitching staff ridden with injuries, and there's just nothing about this team that scares me more than I would get from a team like the Phillies. Things can change, and they can change very fast, but as of right now, the Dodgers as a team, as good as they aren't really as much improved as their payroll was. Not that spending money is bad, it's good and has its benefits for sure, but this also of course proves what we've already known, which is that spending money doesn't necessarily equate to what many in the moment felt it would when the Dodgers spent $1 billion this past offseason. Because this team is only in a worse spot right now. Let me know your thoughts, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.